Welcome to bringing Jesus back into focus. He's very blurry the last 1700 years, but I always knew him as a little child when I was born into the Jewish Christian Catholic Church in 1957 as love and non-violence. My mother had beautiful, intelligent faith. That's her there. She lived to 101. I stopped work to care for her in the last years of life on earth, and it was a great honour to care for her. But we discussed the teachings, and she was the most intelligent spiritual child I ever met. She had what I call intelligent faith. She didn't care about the book of Revelation or the Jewish religion, the Old Testament at all, and neither do I. And in fact, I warn people, don't go there. Stay just with Jesus' words. Now, he had developed an enlightenment and experience with only love. Now, the Jewish religion, as everyone knows, is there are two gods in the Jewish religion. There's a brutal, violent, killing, murdering war god. The Romans call that god Mars, the Greeks call it Ares, the Egyptians call it Sekhmet, and they're all brutal, murdering, slaughtering, fire-breathing sort of gods. Sekhmet's a fire-breathing god like Yahweh. Well, the Jews call their stinking, filthy war god, a genocidal war god, Yahweh. Okay, fine. Yahweh, Mars, Ares, Sekhmet, it's the exact same god. The Jews were worshipping Sekhmet, the Jews were worshipping Mars, Ares, and vice versa, vice versa. It's the same God, just different name, but the same characteristic: murdering, revengeful, killing, genocidal, thief, liar. Okay. Jesus even said, you're children of Satan, and he was a murderer and a liar from the start, and you do the desires of that God. Now he's telling them, you're worshipping a war god, stop doing it. He told them that. Now they had a god of love and peace, the Romans, called Pax. The Greeks had a god of love and peace called Irene. The Egyptians had another god of calming you down. I can't remember its name, but they all had separate temples, separate names. Now the Jews also had a god of peace and love, a different god, the white god versus the black, evil, stinking god of war. Now the Jews were cunning, deceptive, deceiving, liars. They didn't call that god of love Mary or Amore or Pax. Instead they said, let's call our God of love, who says, if a foreigner is amongst you, treat them as if they are Jewish and love them like a Jew. The other God says, go down to the foreigners, Jericho, wipe them out, kill them all, steal their land. That's the war God. The God of love says, treat them like they're Jews and love them. Two different gods. They had what's called the good prophets, who tried to lead the Jews into the more good, correct understanding of the divine source of the heavenly spiritual world, which Jesus finally did achieve, of course, the oneness of God, and they had a war god. Okay, well that's their problem. But the trouble is it spilled over into the Christian religion by the corrupt Jewish leaders in the 4th century. And the pacifist teachings of Jesus was destroyed in the 4th century, and they converted all Christians back into being hybrids, Jewish Christians. A Christian could go to war and kill. Up until then they said, no soldier can be a Christian. But once Emperor Constantine came into power and he gave all the Christians a reprieve, no one was allowed to slaughter Christians anymore, then eventually they caved in and they perverted Jesus' teachings and destroyed his message of being a pacifist, spiritual child on earth, getting ready to leave to the pacifist world of heaven. And from then on it really has been a lot of corruptions. So as a follower of Jesus, of course, I left the Jewish Christian Catholic Church and studied Buddhist teachings and lots of spiritual teachings when I was in my late teens and early 20s. I really loved spiritual thinking. And anyway, I came to the conclusion that in these last few years, when I returned to look at Jewish Christian churches to visit them, I was shocked to see that some of them were just Jewish synagogues and Jesus was simply a sacrificial lamb. That's all he was. And they hardly looked at his teachings. They didn't understand what they really meant, and they were just going on about his coming back on the cloud to cause destruction and death and famine. And I thought, oh, blimey, what's happened to these children? Where have they gone? They're back in Jew land, they're back at Yahweh destroying, Jericho, and they're the only chosen Jewish Christians now, oh, blimey. So I had to redo the Gospels in order to try to help Jesus and the loving spiritual creator in the heavenly spiritual world from here on earth. Because I've always known them since I was a little child. I've always known Jesus' love and non-violence, always. Never interested in the book of Revelation. Never interested in the Jewish religion. I don't need it. I've got him. What else do I need? And then I studied Buddha's teaching, who said you have to clean the inside of your mind out of adventitious negativities. That's the problem. Then you'll have the clear light mind experience of your true identity. Well, Jesus taught the exact same thing. He said it's not the dirt on the outside of your body that's the problem. It's the dirt inside the cup or inside your mind. Clean that out and you'll have the clear light mind experience, which he said you will have. He said if your eye is single and you only see everything through the eye of love, which is heavenly, your whole body will be filled with light. That's what Jesus said. And you'll become children of light, children of heaven on earth in the darkness. So the Gospels that I've retranslated, translated out of the Greek into linear, and my own understanding, of course, I've removed all the poisonous Jewish stuff from these Gospels. There's no apocalyptic anything in my Gospels because they're all lies, as is the book of Revelation, the most filthy, slanderous book ever written about Jesus. I have no reference to that in the Gospels. And because that's slander, and that's written by an apocalyptic Jew who wants to assassinate who Jesus is and the loving creator of Jesus. Now you can buy that book as an e-pub book, an e-published book sort of thing, e-book, so you can get a cheap version of it, and it may stimulate you to reconsider what you've been taught by Jewish Christians who teach all sorts of false lies about Jesus. And but they also have some loving things going on, like charities. That's Jesus. That's the God of Jesus. But not this business about he's coming back on the clouds and you're the only ones who are going to be saved. That's all Jewish stuff. You don't need that. So we're up to looking at the Gospel of John now in the book, and we're up to Jesus' brothers doubt him. So I'll read on. John 7:19. Jesus continued in Galilee, for he did not want to walk in Judea, because the Jews sought to kill him. Now the Feast of Tabernacles was at hand. His brothers said to him, "Depart from here and go into Judea, that your followers there may also see the works that you are doing. For no one does anything in secret while he himself seeks to be known openly. If you do these things, show yourself to the world." For even his own brothers doubted him. Then Jesus said, "My time has not yet come, but your time is always ready. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me, because I testify of it, that its works are evil. You go up to this feast. I'm not yet going up, for my time has not yet fully come." Jesus then remained in Galilee. Author. Jesus was an awakened spiritual child of our loving spiritual creator. Children who worship material things and earthly power hate spiritual children, because their whole being is filled only with love, exposing the greed and evil of other children through the beautiful spiritual contrast that emanates from their spiritual body and soul. So Jesus is saying, oh look, you're in the worldly sort of collective consciousness, you go up, but I'm connected to another dimension, the spiritual heavenly world. It's another dimension. They won't like me, and they are trying to kill me. So anyhow, his brother said, they're trying to kill you, but go up there anyway, Jesus had the Feast of Tabernacles. John 7:10. His brothers left and went to the feast. Jesus then went, but not openly. The Jews searched for him at the feast, for there was much talk about him among the people. Some said he was a good man, while others said he's a deceiver. But no one spoke openly about him for fear of the Jews. During the feast, Jesus entered the temple and taught. The Jews were amazed that such an unlearned man could teach such spiritual teachings. He was enlightened, like Buddha. Jesus said, "My teaching is not mine, but she who sent me. If anyone follows her will, he will know if my teaching is from the loving spiritual creator or whether I am just speaking on my own authority. He who speaks out of his own opinion seeks his own selfish glory, but he who seeks to glorify and honor the one who sent him is true, and in him there is no deceit or evil intent. Moses gave you the law, yet none of you keeps the law. Why do you seek to kill me?" They answered, saying, "You have a demon in you. Who is seeking to kill you?" Jesus replied, "I did one deed in front of you, and you all marveled, but because I healed the man on the Sabbath, you are angry with me. Do not judge according to appearance, but judge with virtuous judgment." Some of them said, "Is this not he whom the Jewish leaders seek to kill? But look, he speaks boldly, and they say nothing to him. Do the rulers know indeed that this is truly the Messiah?" However, they knew where Jesus was from, but none would know where the Messiah was from. So how can some say he is the anointed one? Jesus then proclaimed, "You both know me and know where I am from, for I have not come of my own accord. She who sent me is true, whom you do not know. But I know her, for I am from her, and she sent me." And they wanted to arrest him, but no one was willing to lay a hand on him. Many people believed in him, saying, "When the Messiah does come, will he do more miracles and signs than this man?" The Pharisees heard the crowd murmuring these things about him, so the Pharisees and the chief priests sent officers to seize him. Then Jesus said to them, "I shall be with you a little while longer, and then I will go to her who sent me. You will seek me and not find me, and where I am, you cannot come." The Jews said among themselves, "Where does he intend to go, that we shall not find him? Does he intend to go to the Jewish dispersion among the Greeks and teach the Greeks? What does he mean when he said, 'You will seek me and not find me, and where I am, you cannot come'?" On the last day, the great day of the feast, Jesus stood and cried out, saying, "If anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. He who believes in me, as the scripture has said, out of his heart will flow rivers of living water." Now this he said about the loving spiritual life force, which those who believed in him and his teachings were to receive from the loving spiritual Creator to bring their spirits alive. After hearing Jesus say these things, there was division among the people about who he was. Some said he is a prophet, while others said he was the Messiah, but some questioned his authenticity. Author. Jesus states his spiritual teachings come from the loving Creator in the heavenly spiritual world, and anyone filled with her love will understand his teachings are correct. He questions why they are attacking him when all he does is good. He tells them that if they follow his spiritual teachings and way, they will awaken and also receive the living, loving spiritual life force from the heavenly Creator into their spirits, which can then flow out of their spirits to other children in need. There is division amongst the Jews about Jesus, with some believing in him and others not. The Jewish authorities want him arrested and silenced, as he was taking many Jews away from worshipping their two-headed God, Yahweh, to only follow the one true, loving, spiritual Creator of Jesus. He also tells them he will soon be leaving in his spiritual body to be with our loving spiritual Creator in heaven, but they do not understand this. They have no idea that we have two bodies. Jesus avoids arrest. John 7:45. The officers sent to arrest Jesus returned to the chief priests and Pharisees, who said to them, "Why have you not brought him?" They said, "No man ever spoke like this man." Then the Pharisees said, "Are you also deceived? Have any of the Jewish rulers or Pharisees believed in him? This crowd that does not know the law is cursed." Nicodemus said to them, "Does our Lord judge a man before it hears him and knows what he is doing?" They answered, "Are you also from Galilee? Search and look, for no prophet has arisen out of Galilee." So they're referring back to their old Jewish scriptures, which certainly doesn't mention a spiritually enlightened child like Jesus. Not in the way he was enlightened. They talk about the coming of a Messiah, and but he's an enlightened human child on earth of the loving spiritual Creator. His spiritual body became alive and fully alive, and everyone has a spiritual body to become fully enlivened with the spiritual life force from heaven. And luckily Buddha and Jesus certainly were two that we know achieved this, but they both said everyone can achieve this. It's a universal teaching. Woman caught in adultery. I love this one, it's beautiful. John 8:1-12. Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. In the morning he came into the temple and taught, and the scribes and Pharisees brought to him a woman caught in the act of adultery, and they placed her in the midst of them, and said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. Moses in the law commanded us that such a woman should be stoned to death. But what do you say?" They said this to try and trap him in blasphemy, so they might accuse him and kill him as well. But Jesus stooped down and wrote on the ground with his finger, ignoring them. And as they continued asking him, he stood up and said to them, "He who is without sin amongst you, let him throw a stone at her first." And he stooped down again and continued to write words on the ground in front of them. Then those who heard him say this, being convicted by their own conscience, left one by one, beginning with the oldest. And Jesus was left alone with the woman in the midst of them. When Jesus stood up and saw the woman standing alone, he said to her, "Woman, where are those who accuse you? Has no one condemned you?" She said, "No one, Master." Then Jesus said to her, "Neither do I condemn you. Go, but sin no more." He then said, "I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of spiritual life." Now that's a really incredibly brilliant display of spiritual wisdom from heaven. The murderers that came to murder the woman because of their old Jewish law, the Yahweh war God law, murder someone, kill them if they do something wrong. They wanted to murder Jesus. They knew he was teaching this loving message, forgiving people their sins. They wanted him to blaspheme against Moses or their God, so they could stone him to death. That's why they were there. They weren't there about the woman. They were there trying to kill him, and they were setting him up with the woman. Author. Jesus had a very difficult situation to contend with, but dealt with it on a number of levels through the loving spiritual life force and wisdom that empowered his spiritual body and soul mind of love. The Jews worshipped a two-headed God, and Yahweh one, Godhead of war and death, whom they loved to serve any chance they could get, was the source of this violent condemnation and potential murder of the woman. The Yahweh two, Godhead of love, is ignored when they want to murder or steal. Firstly, he had to save the woman's life. Then he had to do it without committing blasphemy against the two-headed God of the Jews to avoid being murdered by them himself for contradicting their two-headed God Yahweh and Moses. If he openly spoke that Moses followed a false two-headed God, they would have killed him on the spot. He accomplished this in a very simple, effective and powerful way that the murderers could not easily get out of. He just wrote down many of the other rules and laws of the Jewish religion on the ground of dirt for them to see. He knew they were all imperfect in some way and had undoubtedly broken these laws also. Once they saw these other laws that he wrote, each individual realized they were guilty of transgressing a law also like this woman. And since they didn't want to be stoned to death if anyone found out, it prompted their own conscience to walk away from committing murder as Moses instructed them to do. This sort of profound wisdom can only arise through being a fully awakened spiritual child of our loving spiritual Creator, as Jesus had become. At the same time as saving his and the woman's life, he was helping them question their own perverted religion to help them see how brutal their Yahweh one Godhead of war and death really is. They were devoid of true spiritual love and life, so he was directing them to find the one true loving spiritual Creator who can never hurt any child. And he was providing for them a true living example of how a spiritual child of our loving spiritual Creator in this world behaves. Finally, he pours out his and our loving Creator's love over her shame to heal her of this wrongdoing and its consequences, and lovingly advises her to continue on her way in this world towards heaven by not sinning anymore. Unlike the two-headed God of the Jews and its followers, he and our loving spiritual Creator cannot murder or kill anyone, for their entire mind and being is empowered only by her loving spiritual life force. Not death, but life force. Yahweh one is the God of death, the murdering war God. They are single in their identity and are not divided within like the two-headed God of the Jews, and are full of light and love for all her children, and only save them to heaven and never condemn them. We have to condemn ourselves by doing evil. You reap what you sow. They won't do it. Here Jesus gives us all a beautiful example of how to engage with any child who has committed a wrongdoing through seeing them through the eye of love, compassion and forgiveness, instead of hatred and brutal judgment. Jesus speaks the truth. John 8:13-20. The Pharisees said to Jesus, "You only bear witness of yourself. Your own witness alone is not true." Jesus replied, "Even if I do bear witness of myself, my witness is true, for I know where I came from and where I am going. But you do not know where I come from, and you do not know where I am going. You judge according to the flesh. I judge no one. Yet if I do judge, my judgment is true, for I am not alone. I am with my loving Creator who sent me to you. It is also written in your law that the testimony of two is true. I am one who bears witness of myself, and my loving Creator who sent me bears witness of me." They asked, "Where is your loving Creator?" Jesus replied, "You know neither me nor my loving Creator. If you had known me, you would have known my loving Creator also." Jesus said, "I am going away, and you will seek me, but you will die in your sins. Where I go, you cannot come." The Jews then said, "Will he kill himself because he says, 'Where I go, you cannot come'?" He said, "You are from beneath. I am from above. You are of this world. I am not of this world. So I say to you, you will die in your sins. For if you do not believe who I am, you will die in your sins." They asked him, "Who are you?" And Jesus replied, "I have been showing you who I am all along from the beginning. I have many things to say and judge concerning you. She who sent me is true, and I speak to the world those things which I heard and understand from her." They did not understand he spoke to them about the loving spiritual Creator. Then he said to them, "When you realize the spiritual child of humanity is higher in honor, then you will know who I am, and I do nothing by myself, but I teach these things as the loving Creator has taught me. And she who sent me is with me. The loving Creator has not left me alone, for I always do those things that please her." As he spoke these words, many believed in him. It's hard for him to get the Jews out of their worshipping the two-headed God Yahweh into the singularity of just love. I mean, it's a really difficult task, and they kill you if you say anything against their perverted God Yahweh, the two-headed God, which is a perverted God. Two heads on one body, that's a perversion. So he had to be always very careful the way he spoke, yet he tried his best to help them come out of it. Author: Jesus is accused by the Pharisees of just teaching his own opinions and understandings to children. Jesus tells them they have no idea at all about his spiritual identity and his awakening to become a spiritual child of our loving spiritual Creator in heaven. They do not know about the true one loving Creator. They don't understand he's a spiritual child who's with a spiritual body that's fully awakened that won't die, like Buddha. He's enlightened. They don't know anything about that sort of spiritual way. He points out that they are still judging out of their identity of flesh, whereas he judges no one in that way, as he now has a spiritual identity, and he sees things through spiritual wisdom and truth. And he only does the things our loving Creator does, and only teaches the true spiritual way of love that she has shown him. She is only love. He is only love. They're not Yahweh, they're not Yahweh 1, the God of filthy murder. They're much closer to Yahweh 2, the limited understanding of love that the Jews had of Yahweh 2. He tells them he will leave in his spiritual body to go to heaven, but they have no idea of what he means or how to get there because they follow the two-headed God Yahweh, not the one true loving Creator of the heavenly spiritual world of love. His spiritual awakening to become a spiritual child of our loving Creator meant he was no longer primarily of this earth world, but was now primarily from the heavenly spiritual world above. And he tells them that if they had only come to know him and his spiritual way of love to heaven, then they would have come to know our loving spiritual Creator as well. But by refusing to leave their two-headed God Yahweh, they remain in spiritual ignorance, and driven by their worship of the Yahweh one Godhead of war, they continue to sin, murder and steal, such as Jericho and all these other genocidal murders that they committed, along with the Romans and the Greeks and the Egyptians. They were all murdering and killing and stealing whenever they had the opportunity. The Jews were no different. Get over it. Wake up. They're not the only chosen of a god. They're certainly they're the only satanic children of Yahweh, because they worship a satanic Yahweh, a god called Yahweh. So they are the only children of the war god, satanic war god Yahweh. That's true. But the God of love, everyone's a child of the God of love, if you want to be. The truth makes you free. John 8:31-38. Then Jesus said to the Jews who followed him, "If you live out of my word, you are my followers indeed, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." They answered him, "We are Abraham's descendants and have never been in bondage to anyone. How can you say you will be made free?" Jesus answered, "Most assuredly I say to you, whoever commits sin is a slave to sin. And a slave does not live in the house forever, but a son lives there forever. Therefore, if the Son makes you free, you shall be free indeed. I know that you are Abraham's descendants, but you seek to kill me because my spiritual word has no place in you. I speak what I have seen with my loving spiritual Creator, and you do what you have seen with your father." Thomas 70. Jesus said, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you have found will save you. If you do not have that within you, what you do not have cannot save you." The Thomas Gospel is beautiful. Some of it's so brilliant. He's simply saying, if you haven't awoken to your spiritual life that's within you, your spiritual body and your soul, mind of love, that's going to leave at death, if you haven't got that up and running and alive and living out of it, and you're a pacifist, non-violent follower of Jesus of Nazareth in the earth world before you die, if you haven't got that with you when you leave, he's saying what you do not have cannot save you. But if you bring forth what is within you, what you have found will save you. If you find your spiritual life while you're here in the world of dirt and death and suffering, your spiritual body and soul, mind of love, which is only empowered by heavenly spiritual life forces, then you'll go to heaven when you die. And then consequently, as Jesus often says, you won't die. Your body and flesh will, and it can be very painful. But once it's finished, you'll be free in your spiritual body that you lived out of while you were here, that you found, that you brought alive, and you just filled your life with love and care and non-violence and compassion and generosity for other children. You're a living spiritual child of heaven on earth, just waiting to leave and go to this higher world. I'm from above, he's saying. You got to remember when he said, spirit gives birth to spirit. Marvel not that I tell you, you must be born again from above. That's the Greek translation, from heaven. You have to be inspired by the heavenly spiritual loving life force, empowering your spiritual body to come alive. And you're born again into your spiritual body before your body of flesh dies. That's what he's saying. Author, Jesus tells them if they follow his words and understand them, they will discover the truth. This is the spiritual truth Jesus taught, that we all have two different bodies in one with us right now. A temporary body of flesh that dies and disintegrates and returns to the earth from which it was formed. That's one body. And an eternal spiritual body and soul formed from the loving spiritual life force of our loving spiritual Creator that leaves the body of flesh at death to return to be in the presence of our loving Creator in the heavenly spiritual world, to reap as we have sown. We are then set free of all sin, of all flesh, of all suffering. I mean, the trouble is, if you're sinned here, like the mass satanic murderers in the armies at the moment who are satanic children, killing, and they worship death and Satan, and they kill and murder. All the different armies are satanic at the moment, murdering. Then they won't be set free, of course. They'll be imprisoned after they die. But those of us who are children of peace and love here will be set free from the death experience, the painful death experience of our body, or our life here of sufferings. We'll be set free because we're a child of love and non-violence now. Despite sufferings, we'll be free of them because we've committed no suffering to others. Whereas the mass murderers at the moment, the Israeli satanic army, the Russian satanic army, Hamas satanic army, Iran satanic army, United States satanic army, the satanic armaments industry and everyone involved in that industry, they're all working for Satan. They're all dark, shadow, evil children because that's what they want to be. That's their choice to go to hell. We can't stop them. They're choosing hell. They're choosing death. They worship the war god. They are children of the war god now. They've left their spiritual identity within their body, And they've become beasts of the flesh with false fake identities of ego and brute force and all that stuff. That's why Jesus said, if you do not have that within you, what you do not have cannot save you. See, they can't be saved. They're all going to go to hell. Unless they repent, of course, before they die and drop their guns and bombs and drones and go home. And love. It's up to them, though. They're choosing at the moment to go into extreme, horrific suffering of their own making. The loving Creator and Jesus don't ever throw you into hell. They don't make hell. They've got nothing to do with evil or hell or suffering. They've got nothing to do with that. The war god Yahweh of the Jews will throw you into hell. Like all war gods will kill you. Putin's a little war god. If you do something against him, what does he do? He kills you. Adolf Hitler was a war god. If you do something against him, disobey him, what does he do? He kills you. If you disobey the war god Yahweh of the Jews, what does the Yahweh God do? He kills you. It's just a war god, a stinking, filthy war god. Then they've got a Yahweh, a God of love. That's a different God. They should have called that by a different name. They were dishonest. So Jesus is always trying to help us come to be free through coming into our spiritual body, and then we will be free, eventually, of all the earthly sufferings. It'll set us free. Our spiritual body coming alive will set you free of being in this suffering earth world and death and grief and all the rest of it that happens. So that's the beautiful thing. And it really is fantastic to think we've got this beautiful spiritual body, and once we move into the other heavenly spiritual dimension with our spiritual body and our spiritual mind of love, where all the other children are just children of love, no one's frightened there anymore, because no one can hurt you there, because all the children who could hurt you, they're somewhere else suffering because of all their evil. They're going through the cleansing, their burning realizations in a hellish experience. They're not allowed to enter heaven. Only clean children can enter heaven. It's a beautiful thing. So that's how we're set free. So an eternal spiritual body and soul formed from the loving spiritual life force of our loving spiritual Creator that leaves the body of flesh of death to return to be in the presence of our loving Creator in the heavenly spiritual world, to reap as we have sown. We are then set free. Providing you've been filled with love, you're going to be free forever in a world where everyone's full of love. But because it's a spiritual dimension, I've never seen it or anything, but the thing is, it'll seem as real as this world does of dirt and bones and meat. Bones and meat, I mean, really. We're like a walking compost bin, you know what I mean, without going into too much language. In the Thomas saying, Jesus states we must all bring our inner spiritual identity within us alive to be saved to heaven. That's really important. That's Thomas saying number 70. It's a really important, simple saying. That's why they wanted to destroy the Thomas Gospel. These are the Jewish Christians, and they wanted this, your body rises in the flesh, and then Jesus came up 3 days later, and he's coming back on the clouds. That's a lot of really poisonous, evil Jewish overlays to pervert and distort who Jesus really was. So don't listen to any of that rubbish if they tell you that in your Jewish Christian church. Just ignore it. It's rubbish. It's lies. Once we become spiritually awakened and live out of our spiritual identity on earth, we can no longer sin in any way, as our spiritual life is only empowered by the loving spiritual life force of our loving Creator in heaven, who is only love. Therefore, as her awakened spiritual children on earth, we are only love. It is the body of flesh that can produce a false shadow identity, prone to temptation, through which we can commit all evil and sin. So the body of flesh is vulnerable. The brain mind is chemical and it's vulnerable. And then poison thoughts come into your head as well, egotistical. And you think, I'm going to become a powerful dictator, kill whoever I want. Well, you've moved out of your spiritual body, obviously, because you can't hurt anyone in your spiritual body, which is going to heaven. But once you move out of it, you've got to create a false identity, turn your back on the light, cast a shadow, and move into the shadow. And you become the great Vladimir Putin. Look how many people I can kill. Netanyahu and the Israeli army. Look how many Palestinians we can kill, 80,000. Hamas, look, we can kill 1,000 Jews. Look, Iran, we can kill that many. Ukraine, we can kill that many Russians. They're all just beasts of the flesh, covering themselves in layers of death. And as Jesus said, if what you have within you doesn't come forth, your spiritual body of love, then you can't be saved at death. Particularly if you're covered in filth and murder and death. You're actually worshipping the satanic god of death when you're in those sort of armies. You are a satanic child. What more can you say? So we'll leave it there. Satan's children. Oh, one of my next favourite ones. So Jesus is always saying the same thing. You've got two bodies. One is flesh. Be careful, it's dualistic. Don't become a beast of the flesh. Don't become a false identity, a satanic identity, a lie unto yourself. Kill, murder, steal, worship a war god, rob, steal, dominate, invade Ukraine, invade the West Bank, steal all the land, kill the Palestinians. Don't become satanic children. You won't get into heaven and you're going to suffer and you're going to be screaming. They're all going to be screaming like you. The fear in their minds when they die, these murderers, these satanic murderers in the armies, they have no idea how horrific their life, their mental experience will be after murdering so many children. They've got no idea. They're going to be it's beyond words the hell that they're going to experience, I'm afraid. They'll be cleansed for however many years or hundreds of years they'll be suffering after all these thousands of deaths they've deliberately caused through their free will. They've freely chosen to go to hell. Anyway, so Jesus is saying, stay in your spiritual body. Don't do that. Be filled with love and light. And this is a violent world, and you'll be persecuted, and you'll even be hated, just like me. And particularly the satanic children, they'll really hate you because you're not going to join the army. You're going to condemn it. You will condemn the armaments industry. You'll condemn the armies of the world, your own army in your own country, which I do. I condemn the Australian Army. I condemn the submarines we're buying when we've got homeless people on the street. We need nursing homes for the elderly. There are Aboriginal people who need help. But no, we're buying nuclear-powered submarines worth billions. That is satanic. And the government doing that, we're Liberal and Labor, it doesn't matter which government does it, they're satanic. They're poisoning the world with violent, satanic weapons. We should have a fleet of ships full of government children, army of children who are engineers, doctors, farmers, bridge builders, house builders, well diggers, and we send our flotilla of ships and planes that only carry beautiful, good, loving things to everyone in need in the world, whether it's a tsunami disaster, earthquake disaster, a war-torn country, food supplies, medical supplies. If I was Prime Minister of Australia, that's the sort of fleet air force that I would create. Why not? Why use tax money for weapons and guns and bombs? That's all satanic. Why not do something with it that's heavenly? If we don't start doing it in Australia or some other country doesn't start doing it, it'll never happen. No one's got the guts to do it. They're gutless. They don't believe in heaven anyway, so what's the point? They won't do it. Oh no, we've got to kill people. What for? They're going to die anyway. Love your way to heaven, Jesus said, through bringing your spiritual body alive and fill it with love and non-violence. And you will be in heaven, you won't die. But everyone has to experience a death experience, and it can be brutal and difficult and excruciating. I don't deny any of that sort of thing, and I'm sure Jesus doesn't either. On the cross, he said, loving Creator, why have you forsaken me? He was in such horrific pain from his body's nervous system and brain that his spirit and his spiritual mind was so overwhelmed by simply the physical body. Everyone knows that you get in really serious pain in your body, you are screaming. Not many people cannot do that. If you're in massive pain and agony, you are only in agony. There is nothing else in your experience. Pure agony. You can't think, oh, heaven's a nice place. You can't do it. You can't even connect to heaven because the physical body, when it's in that sort of state, particularly in the death experience and you're moving into the extreme agony experience itself, it overwhelms your brain mind completely until this piece of meat here in the middle There's a piece of meat here that keeps moving. Once that piece of meat stops moving amongst all the bones and stuff here in this biological organism, your spirit leaves the body. And this physical body, this biological organism that we're riding around on, it can't send us any more experiences. It's dead. What leaves is your spiritual body. Jesus says, how much life do you have in that body of love and non-violence? How much loving spiritual life force from heaven is in your spiritual body at the time of death? That, he said, is the most important thing of all to achieve while you're here for a little while in this violent, dualistic earth world of dirt. Get your spiritual body ready, healthy and well to leave, because heaven's eternal. You'll never have to die again. No one can ever hurt you again. You'll never suffer again. And you'll be there with children who are only full of love. And it's eternal. Sounds good to me. Love your way to heaven, hate your way to hell. The choice is yours. Please choose the right one. I'll see you there, I hope. Bye.